and Ranking Member Scott for coming to testify before us today. I appreciate your time. I am a member of the Education and Workforce Committee, so I'm glad this is being considered by the committee. I think it's so important. Dr. Fox, there's been some discussion on the appropriate role of the federal government in education with respect to this legislation. Does this bill, in your opinion, open the door to the federal government getting too involved in education?
No, and I thank Mr. Roy for his comments. I think he amplifies the fact that the federal government is already involved. Many of us think inappropriately, and I will state that again, but it doesn't open the door for the federal government to micromanage the schools. It adds some things, which again, will go back to what happened during COVID. Parents found out that they were not being adequately informed of what was happening in the schools. And as the first teachers of their children, and as the people who should be most concerned about the welfare of their children, they need to know what's being taught in the schools, what's happening in the schools as far as crimes concerned, what's happening with their children's privacy information, where the money's, their hardworking taxpayers' dollars are being spent. So we think this is an appropriate addition to the kinds of things that parents ought to be told, and that we want children to be safe in the schools.
Yes, thank you. I agree. We've heard some comments from our colleagues across the aisle that we're forcing schools to out students. We're not forcing schools to out students. We are, though, solidifying parental rights to know what is happening with their own children. I want to just note that sending a child to a public school does not terminate their own parental rights at the door.
Correct.
That's what my colleagues across the aisle, I think, seem to believe. Dr. Fox, with the Parents' Bill of Rights, aren't we simply reaffirming the rightful place of parents in the driver's seat with regard to their children's education and well-being?
Yes, absolutely. And I think we've done a very good job in this bill of really honing down the issues to those things that we think, as Republicans, are the most important things for parents to know about what's happening in the schools. So we're doing our best not to add any burdens to the schools, not to push down a lot of unfunded mandates to the schools. So I think, yeah, I think we're being very judicious in what we do because, again, the majority of us, I believe, would like to get the federal government out of the education business altogether. And so while I have a great deal of respect for the Cato Institute, I wonder if Cato came out against ESEA when ESEA was passed. I don't know that it did, maybe it did, or ESSA, when No Child Left Behind was undone and ESSA was passed. I just wonder if Cato came out against that. I don't know.
And I just want to reiterate, the Parents' Bill of Rights contains 5 basic principles. The right that parents have the right to know what their children are being taught, that parents have a right to be heard, that parents have a right to see the school budget, that parents have the right to protect their children's privacy, that parents have a right to keep their children safe. Is there anything in there about book banning?
No, ma'am.
So we've heard also our colleagues across the aisle say that Democrats are partners with parents and that they offered 25 amendments, which I was in committee. We were in committee, Dr. Fox, until about 3:30, 2:30 in the morning,
right,
hearing the amendments. But my view of over and over again, what I heard in amendment after amendment, was that the Democrats want bureaucrats to be in control of children's education and their mental well-being. It was clear to me that what they think is that it's Big Brother that knows best, not mother, father, or guardian. I worked in child services. I've cared for children in foster care. Having the state in place of parents is not the ideal. It is sometimes necessary for the safety of children. However, even in that case, even in the case when foster parents are caring for children who are in the custody of the state, they cannot give children a haircut without getting permission from the child's biological parents. But in the view of Democrats, they want to be able to decide what's best for a child's education and their mental health and well-being, and want to claim the right to keep that information from parents. This very attitude among the liberal elite left is what brought parents to school boards and state houses all across the United States, and yes, even to the Congress, to plead for information, to plead for the safety of their kids in public restrooms and locker rooms, to plead for a quality education, and to plead for anyone who would listen to help restore their parental rights. A word carefully chosen by my friends across the aisle is that they are for parental engagement. That's an interesting word choice. We are for parental rights. They are for parental engagement. But make no mistake, under the engagement model, when push comes to shove and a school must decide between what a parent wants and what is best for the bureaucracy, many have shown time and again they will side with the bureaucracy. And that alone, I think, is a great reason to support this bill to establish the fundamental rights of parents to information and control of their kids' education. Ranking Member Scott, you commented that one of the amendments put forth was for a parent-teacher coordinator. Mr. Scott, who would pay for the salary of the parent and teacher coordinator?
That would be, if we're going to require it, we need to pay for it.
Would the local school corporation be in charge of hiring that person?
Yes.
So how could parents be assured that a parent-teacher coordinator hired by the school corporation would advocate on their behalf?
Well, that's the job of the person. And if you have the right to information, you suggested there's a right to control the education. There's nothing in this bill that requires, after you know the information, there's nothing in this bill that requires the school board to do what the parents are saying they want done.
I would just argue that it would be hard for an employee of the school corporation to be an unimpartial advocate for the parent in that situation. One of the things that you commented is that these things that we're doing, they're either present law or at least general practice. What do you say to parents where this isn't general practice?
Well, I think the right to address the school board without limitation would be one. I'm not aware of any school board where you can't address the school board with reasonable limitations. And you're giving a federal cause of action for someone or group of people, each and every one, having a federal right to top a school board meeting without limitation, because the legislative intent was clear when you defeated my amendment to have reasonable limitations on it. There are no reasonable limitations, so what happens after the first 50 out of 100 people have spoken? Do the other 50 have a federal cause of action against the school board?
Mr. Scott, I believe that if 100 parents show up to a school board meeting, they have a right to be heard. So you also said that no law denies—
Without limitation.
No law denies a parent to meet with a school corporation, that documents are public subject to a FOIA, that we have that opportunity to get curriculum if they file a FOIA. Are you aware that in December of 2022, a judge in the state of Michigan ruled that teachers are exempt from FOIA?
No, but public documents are in Virginia. I'm not familiar with
So
the
there's
law
at least
somewhere
one
else.
state that has determined that a FOIA is not a reasonable request from a parent for information.
Well,
A
I'm not
parent
sure.
had
I'm not
asked
sure
for
what. I'm
lesson
not sure.
plans.
I'm not
Excuse
sure
me, I'm
what-
reclaiming my time.
I'm not sure what they asked for.
A parent had asked for lesson plans, assignments, and other teaching materials from an ethnic and gender studies class. She was provided only with a syllabus. She sued, and the court ruled against her on the basis that teachers in the state of Michigan are exempt from FOIA requests. Are you familiar with the name Nicole Solis?
Excuse me?
Nicole Solis?
No.
Ms. Solis tried to get information from her child's elementary school after a principal informed her they didn't refer to students as boys or girls. She requested information on whether or not her daughter's curriculum included principles of CRT, then expanded her request to include requests in emails from school administrators, teachers, and teachers' unions officials. Guess what she got for following the FOIA procedure? She didn't get the information she was seeking. She got sued by the National Education Association. That lawsuit is still ongoing. So I think these things alone are enough to support this bill. Mr. Scott, if parents shouldn't be in charge of children's education, who should be?
Well, there's nothing in the bill that puts the parents in charge of the education. They have a right to be heard, but that doesn't give them any right in this bill to control the education.
Let me just restate. They have a right to know what their children are being taught. They have a right to be heard. They have a right to see the school budget. They have a right to protect their privacy. They have a right to keep their children safe. I think those are pretty critical to
And-
put them
and
in
then-
the
yeah,
driver's
but
seat
that
in their
is-
kids'
you
education. I'm
said-
going to reclaim my time. So the bottom line is parents have a right to be informed. We want limited government with the power to the people. I don't think anything that we're doing in this legislation takes away from limited government. They want limits to the rights of the people through the power of the government. Dr. Fox, why is it so important to pass this bill?
Well, for all the reasons you have stated, but I wanted that. In charge of their child's education, because then they know what's happening. Up until now, they don't know what's happening.
That's right.
And as you said about Ms. Solis, she was harassed when she was asked for that information. And as you pointed out, she's currently being sued. She was told to get the information, she was going to have to pay. She was going to have to wait. That would deny her the opportunity to be in control of her child's education. And that's what bureaucrats do. They deny the parents the opportunity to be in control of their children's education. And we have many, many examples, as you pointed out. I think Ms. Solis is one of the prime examples of how the bureaucracy fights against parents. And that's why we need this legislation.
I absolutely agree. Mr. Chairman, can I yield 1 minute to Mr. Norman?
Gentleman from South Carolina is recognized.